Hi, folks. I'm Pastor Scott Whelan, and I'm coming to you from my offices down in Southwest Florida. This evening, I want to talk to you again about the upcoming election. So I'm speaking mostly to my brothers and sisters in Georgia. I want to start tonight by first reading two Proverbs. Proverbs 3:28 says, "Do not say to your neighbor, 'Come back tomorrow, and I'll give it to you,' when you already have it with you." Okay? And Proverbs 63 says, "So do this, my son, to free yourself, since you've fallen into your neighbor's hands. Go to the point of exhaustion and give your neighbor a rest." Now, in light of the recent things that this president has done, in particular, he's refused to sign the COVID relief bill. So those are the folks that really are needing the money, are mostly the folks that are voting in Georgia anyways. He's just denied it. He's denied the money that what little bit of relief we could have gotten from it, he's taken that away. He has vetoed the bill to pay our troops. So now we've got troops that are being unpaid. He doesn't care. And here's how he doesn't care. After he has done nothing about these two incidents, he takes off to Florida for a vacation. While he's also doing all this, he's got 23 of these presidential pardons for crooks that have been prosecuted and sent to prison for crimes that they committed that you and I, quite frankly, would never be pardoned for these crimes. Now, these are just some of the things that this man is doing right now. Now, I'm going to tell you something. There's only one way to stop this guy. And there's only one way to make sure that this action that he's done gets undone. And that's your vote come January in this runoff election. Leviticus says that if anyone sins and is unfaithful to the Lord by deceiving his neighbor about something entrusted to them, oh yeah, I want to ask you, who's your neighbor tonight? That's what this is about. Who is your neighbor? Because whatever we do, we're doing it for our neighbors. Who is your neighbor tonight? Leviticus says, by deceiving our neighbors about something entrusted to them or left in their care about something stolen, or if they cheat their neighbor. It says, quote, and I quote, "When they sin in any of these ways and realize their guilt, they must return what they have stolen. They must make restitution." Now, we don't expect restitution from this president, but you, Georgia voters, you can force that restitution. You can force that restitution with your votes by voting for the two candidates, the Democratic candidates, giving this president-elect control of the Congress so that he can start undoing some of the stuff that this Donald Trump has perpetrated against the American citizen. First, I want to give thanks to my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ for putting this message in my heart. Then I want to give thanks to Brother Josephus for ministering to my brothers and sisters there in the fine state of Georgia. Here's a few facts about this sermon of mine. When you voted in November, Georgia took the election away from that heathen in Washington, Donald Trump. Took it away from him. Yeah. Thank God for you folks in Georgia. Thank God that somebody woke up and said, this must stop. And I know there's some big people around there, Tracy. We know that you're out there doing your work. We know there's other people working with you to get this message across. Thank God. After counting the ballots 3 times in Georgia, it wasn't enough. Trump went to your governor and said, hey, call a special legislation. Let's get this election just thrown out because the people in Georgia, your votes didn't matter. Fortunately, a Republican governor said, no, I'm not going to do this. Trump, the chief of deceit, has tried to get the voting machines confiscated in hopes to make some kind of factual basis that they were miscalibrated, suggesting that every time a vote was cast for him, that it was actually given to Joe Biden. It's ludicrous, brothers. It's ludicrous what this man is trying to get people to believe. What's more ludicrous, though, is that 72 million people who voted for him apparently did believe him. And there's still a bunch that still believe him. Trump is a man who thinks only of himself. And the two Republican candidates that are running in your runoff, let's just get them to admit what Trump is doing. Let's get them to admit that Trump is trying to steal this election away from Georgia voters. They won't do it. They still admit, or they still think, or they confess from their mouths that this president might be right about voter fraud. He might be right about voter fraud, but how about Attorney General Barr? His own chief law officer says no, there's no evidence of voter fraud. And there's no evidence that the machines need to be confiscated. He's not going to do it. To make his point, he's stepping down. Well, good for you, Mr. Barr. The Homeland Security officer, whose primary job was to make sure that the election across the nations were held with the least amount of fraud, with the most amount of integrity possible in an election, and certainly with the most scrutiny of any election past. And he said there was nothing wrong. Nothing that stood out that said this election was a fraud. Trump didn't like that either, so he fired him too. Now Trump is saying that he thinks China is the one that's involved in election tampering. And when his, once again, Attorney General Barr and all the other folks say that it's Russia, Trump refuses to acknowledge that it might be Russia that's doing this. He'd rather put it on China, his buddy Putin. Trump has also now tried for 4 years to take away your health insurance. All right, maybe not yours, but I can guarantee you this, you've got a neighbor or two that's depending on that insurance. Who's your neighbor? That's right, your neighbor's one who needs help. Your neighbor's not always the one that's standing up high. Oftentimes your neighbor is somebody standing right beside you, needing you. Okay, so what happens with the health care? Trump says, oh, we've got something else in place of the Obamacare. Well, what is it? Oh, you know what it is? Well, it's in that same little red wagon that's carrying around all them fraudulent votes that Trump claims that they saw. The video, of course, shows somebody carrying around a wagon, but and Trump knew that it wasn't votes because the Secretary of State came out and said, no, that's not what's going on here. Let me tell you what's going on. And he explains it away, but Trump doesn't accept that. He retweets this video, again, to just plant that seed, not of doubt, that seed of deceit. There's a difference. There's a difference. You can doubt something, but when you know that it's not true, and you pass it on, it's not doubt any longer, it's deceit. This man is the prince of deceit. Here, the Apostle John says, you belong to your father, the devil. And you want to carry out your father's desires. He was a murderer from the beginning, not holding to the truth, for there is no truth in him. When he lies, he speaks his native language, for he is the liar and the father of lies. Now, I'm sorry. I don't know of anybody on this planet right now that fits that pair of shoes like Donald Trump. I don't even think Putin and Xi Jinping and some of these communist presidents have this policy of mass deception like this president does. Well, I'd like to meet you, Mr. President, just so I can look you right in your eye and tell you what I think of you and your lies and your deceit and your willingness to steal from the American voters. St. Paul compares liars and liars with sexual immorals and slave traders and perjurers. He says, and for whatever else is contrary to the sound doctrine. Paul says its teachings come through hypocritical liars whose conscience have been seared with a hot iron. Apostle Paul. Georgia, let me tell you, you've been champions within the past election. You came through. You did. You did the right thing, and you got one more time to repeat what you did. Go back to the polls, Georgians. Go back to the polls one more time and let this president know that he's not taking anything from you. He's not taking anything away from your neighbors either. You're going to show them this. You're going to show them with your votes. Now, we know that the Republican senators, Kelly Loeffler and David Perdue, they just flat refuse to admit that Trump might be wrong. But then they won't even debate the Democratic candidates because, well, how can you debate something that even you don't believe in? Now, I say they don't believe that Trump's wrong, but they do. They do, but they certainly can't admit it. I mean, if 72 million people voted for Trump, these two Republican candidates are vying for those votes. Well, let me say, hold on just a minute. Hello? Let me just finish this real quick. Okay, so Exodus 23:7 says that we're admonished to have nothing to do with a false charge. Have nothing to do with a false charge. Georgia, you need to continue your work. Get out and vote for these two men who need to help President Biden get this country on track. Get out and cast your vote for John Ossoff and the Reverend Warnock. They need your vote. Sadly, St. Paul, 1 Timothy 5:15 says that some have, in fact, already turned away to follow this chief liar, to follow safe, and there have been some. In fact, in the general election, as I've said, 72 million have followed this man. Brothers and sisters, hold on. I don't know why they insist. Brothers and sisters, this isn't a small situation here. This isn't a time that you can just sit back and hope, because I'm going to tell you something. It wasn't your hope that delivered Georgia to Joe Biden. Your hope didn't do it. It was your actions. You can sit back and hope that this runoff is going to go the way it should be, but hope will not do it. It's your actions. You show this chief liar that black, brown, yellow, white people do not accept his name calling, his critical judgment. We do not accept his divisiveness between Christians and Muslims. And we depend on our right to vote to do the right thing, to clean up Washington, to help Joe Biden clean up Washington. I pray for each and every one of you. Do not give up the good fight. You know the work. You know the good work that you've already accomplished. Go out and finish the work. Brothers, I pray, Lord, guide them. Lord, give them hope, but douse it with action, Lord. Make their feet swift to righteousness. Make their hearts believe for their neighbors and not for the politics. And we can do this. God bless you. God bless you, Brother Josephus. And God bless the President of the United States and the United States of America. Good night.